In this mini-series of Restore It, I'm going to give my BMW E30 325i Touring a mini restoration. Why this one and not the 325i Sport, I hear one of you ask? Well, with the new workshop costing a small fortune and being a lot smaller than the old one, funds and space are now limited. I've also come to the realisation that once the 325i Sport is finished, I'm going to want to restore something that isn't an E30, so the Touring won't be needed for the channel. This car has always been mechanically sound enough, which was good enough for me, and thankfully it never let me down. I even drove it from Cambridgeshire in the UK to Alicante in Spain in 2 days without a single issue. Some of you might remember the episodes I made on this car when I lived in Spain. As I was waiting for major work on the main project, I decided to undertake an engine bay and front end restoration on this Touring and swap in the lower mileage engine from the Sport as it had recently undergone a restoration. And the engine from the Touring was then used in the 9-part engine restoration series and will be going into the 325i Sport main project when the time comes. The first Touring restoration series included fully dismantling the front end, fully derusting the entire engine bay, welding in a new covering plate, adding some new parts like bumper shocks, radiators, etc., and a full respray of many parts including the engine bay itself. And once that was done, the lower mileage engine and gearbox were installed and the engine bay was rebuilt. So the engine and front end are in quite good condition. I also did a rear end restoration that was good, right up until the clear coat, but we'll get to that soon. In the last episode on this Touring, we got the car working after swapping over a few relays and connectors to accommodate the new engine and gearbox. And with it started and running, I drove the car out of the workshop. Well, I haven't driven the car since then. And in those 4 years or so, some things have gone wrong. And I mean very wrong. It's actually amazing how much has gone wrong even though the car hasn't driven a mile. Before I show you everything that's wrong with this Touring now and everything we're going to be fixing, I want to quickly talk to you about Fume, a great way of fixing your bad habit. So a package just arrived today and it's something I ordered as a gift for a good friend of mine, and would you look at this, it's a flavoured air device. Cold turkey may be great on sandwiches, but there's definitely a better way to break your habits. And we're not talking about some crazy pseudoscience rubbish, we're talking about today's sponsor, Fume, and they look at the problem in a different way. Not everything in your bad habit is wrong, so instead of drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavoured air device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapour, Fume uses flavoured air. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavours. You get it, instead of bad, Fume is good. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable and even fun. Fume has served over 150,000 customers and has thousands of success stories, and there's no reason that can't be you. Join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com/restore it or scan the QR code and use code RESTOREIT to get 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and use code RESTOREIT to save an additional 10% off your order today. Thanks to Fume for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back to the Touring. There's around 20 things I'd like to sort out before the car will go on sale. Some of them I've known about since I bought the car, and some I found during the filming of this episode. I do want to make some progress this episode, so I'm not going to spend too long showing you the issues, as you'll see all of them in detail once I start addressing them. So to start us off, both front wings aren't attached to the car because the panels themselves have rusted so badly, and so has the body where they attach. So they'll both be coming off, and I think we're looking at 2 repair panels for the bottoms of both wings. The wheels aren't in terrible condition, but could do with a fresh coat of paint. This wing mirror has always been badly corroded ever since I bought the car and has just got worse as the years have gone on. The other side is corrosion free but is scratched quite badly. As I mentioned before, I messed up the clear coat on the boot lid, so this is going to be redone properly. The front seats are looking pretty tired. The pattern fabric is worn on both of the lower middle sections, so ideally both of these need to be replaced. The driver's side bolster has that classic wear patch that many E30s have. And finally, the driver's seat struggles to stay upright when you put any pressure on it, so we'll have to look into that as well. Now this one is definitely on me. After reinstalling the engine and gearbox, apart from making sure it idled well and revved nicely, we didn't really test anything else, the gears being one of them. I recently found out that it's a little bit harder to get into fifth than the rest of the gears, and coming back out of fifth is much louder and sharper feeling than it should be. I'm pretty sure it's something simple like not being positioned correctly, but we'll soon find out in a coming episode. Moving on, the car won't crank. At some point there was a ticking noise when I turned the key, but now it's stopped. It could be the starter or a bad earth, but it's definitely not the battery. There's a pretty straightforward procedure to follow on e30zone.net to troubleshoot a non-starting E30, so when that episode comes, we'll go through it and see what's going on. Moving on to the headliner fabric, which, as a result of the very hot Spanish sun, is now sagging everywhere apart from where it's being pinched in, by the sunroof or grab handles for example. Would you go with black or stay with the factory beige? I'm really not sure which one to choose. The rear right passenger door and boot lid have become completely stuck at some point. This could be a number of things, so I'll have to manually undo them for now to get to the headliner. Unlike the rest of them, the front driver's side door is not in good shape at all. There's a few deep scratches on the outside and what looks like not a lot of metal left on the inside. I'm pretty sure you're not meant to be able to fit your fingers inside the bottom of the door. There are a few other scratches and dents around the car, but overall, compared to the 325i Sport at least, it's not in that bad condition. For example, there is no rust on any of the arches. The seals around the sunroof are definitely on their way out, and there's a few rust patches on the top that need to be addressed. I can already see a few parts that are missing or broken that will need to be found or replaced. The engine bay is now covered in 4 years of dust and could do with a good clean. Things like the washer fluid reservoir need to be plugged in and tested, as well as a few other small things that I didn't get around to last time. And finally, let's take a look at the underside of the car. It really is your typical 30-year-old car under here, a bit of rust and I'm sure some very worn out bushings and other things like that. Besides replacing the fuel lines and the pump, I haven't done anything under here since buying the car. There's plenty to do, but I'm not going to spend years doing it. This is going to be the only thing I work on until it's complete, so more like a few months at most. To help keep these episodes consistent, I'm going to keep the talking to a minimum during the actual work, as it pretty much speaks for itself. Having said that, that's enough talking, let's make some progress. So I'm going to remove some of the issues I've just mentioned, starting with the front wings. And there we have it. That's everything I'll be removing this episode. With the headliner out, I'm shocked to see just how little rust there is at the top of this car. One of the main reasons I decided to do a full chassis restoration on the 325i Sport was because the roof was so rusty, let alone the rest of the car. Thankfully, this one is in almost perfect condition. I'm not sure if it's an MTech 1, MTech 2 thing, but I'm genuinely surprised at just how little rust there is. Once the old headliner glue is removed, it will look almost new, which is great news and also sort of affirms my decision to not do a full nut and bolt restoration on this car. The headliner itself is also in great condition and once retrimmed should look as good as new. Once again, do let me know down in the comments if you would stick with the original colour or take this opportunity to change the colour to black. So all of these parts that I've removed in this episode are probably going to be most of the parts I'll be removing that aren't on the underside of the car. And using what I've learned from the W123 series, I'm keeping everything organised and labelled. So that's all I had time for this week, but join me next week when I'll be fixing some of the removed issues and seeing if I can't work out why it won't start. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon with part 2.